Greetings, my friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White. I am so thrilled to be here with you guys tonight. Now, listen, I am so thrilled about the guest that we have today. This is truly a rock star, part of my TEDx family. And before I bring this amazing individual on the show, I'm going to make some announcements to you guys. I hope you've been having a wonderful week. I hope that you've been winning in life. I hope that you're fulfilling your purpose. Just know that the best is always yet to come for you. So with that said, I'm going to first start out with some announcements. So first off, the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White will be featured on Swain Girl Media Channel, hosted by Precious Swain. Thank you so much, Precious, for this wonderful opportunity on Fire Stick, and you can listen to it on Apple Tunes and things like that. In addition, I want you guys to check out my website whenever you get a chance for blogs, books, and to schedule me for your next speaking or coaching event. If you want to talk about women empowerment, if you want to talk about math, education, equity, if you want to talk about different things, business, whatever, let's make it happen together. Okay. Now, I also want to give you the opportunity to follow me on social media because we've got some connecting to do. We've got some ideas to share. We need to partner. We need to help each other. So here I am. Okay. So Facebook, you can reach me at Miss India White. LinkedIn is The India White. That's THEINDIAWHITE. Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. That's INDISP as in Paul, EAK, the letter N in the word teach. And Instagram is Indie238. And my YouTube channel, please like and subscribe. I am still developing content for you guys. I'm super excited about it. That is India White 123. Okay, so with that said, guys, I am so thrilled to bring on my next guest, which I met this amazing young man at the TEDx event. He also was in the room and he was a TEDxer. And when I say I was in awe as I heard this man speak, and I just knew, okay, me and this guy, we got to stay connected for life because he's just working with just some awesomeness. And I just need to be a part of this. So with that said, I am so thankful and honored to bring on to this platform TEDx speaker, prosecutor, and a motivator in his own right. That is Wesam Shahed. So delighted to see you, Wesam. How are you?
Hi, Dr. India. It's great to be on this podcast with you with your amazing energy. Thank you so much for having me. And hello, everyone.
Hey, so we are so excited. Now, Wesam, they might not know what you do. They might not know a lot about your profession, whatever. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And hello, everyone. My name is Wesam Shahed, and I'm an assistant state's attorney at the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. In English, that means a prosecutor in Chicago. So the Cook County State's Attorney's Office is actually the second largest prosecutor's office in the whole nation. Wow. Here in the United States.
Amazing.
So there's about 700 prosecutors and over 1,000 total employees with the staff. And right now, I'm specializing in domestic violence prosecution. So I'm representing and helping victims of domestic violence on a day in, day out. And when I gave the TEDx talk, at the time I was focusing on more of the misdemeanor crimes, batteries, trespasses to land, maybe a criminal trespass to vehicles, thefts, and the retail thefts, all that type of stuff you usually hear on the news.
Wow, that's amazing. So you're a prosecutor and you work in domestic violence. And you were able to also speak about this. And I heard your TED Talk and it was amazing. Some of the things you spoke about with domestic violence and things like that. What do you think when you were on that stage and you had to kind of get your point across? There was a lot of grit involved. Talk to us about, for one, what does grit mean to you? And how have you been able to cultivate grit in your area of work?
Yeah. And, when we think about grit on the daily basis of these people's lives, whether it is domestic violence or, in the TED Talk, we talked about the story of Chris, this young boy or a young man who is at this crossroads, essentially, has to ask himself, what is the purpose of my life here? What's the end goal? Where am I going, right? And with the story of Chris, and you tie this into grit, he had a choice to make. Easier, perhaps, to let things happen and perhaps enter the system, the criminal justice system as is, or fight hard. In the story of Chris, too much spoilers, and you're more than welcome to watch my TEDx talk to see the ending. He had a decision to make. Do I fight for that graduation day in high school, and bring my grades up? Or do I just let the life be as it is and just keep entering the system as is, right? And, I come across so many defendants each day, and victims too. Every day they have a decision to make. And when we talk about grit, it's my philosophy is grit is not some sort of, oh, I have this one goal and I'm aiming towards this goal and I'm going to show tenacity. In our daily lives, we show grit every day. And that depends on how you want to perceive it. Getting out of bed, going to work, go living your passion, whether it's going to work or, just getting up and seeing your friends and family, going out, right?
Right.
Having to will to keep moving forward and not just sitting back and just, okay, that's it. I'm just going to go along with the flow. In this case, with the story of Chris or other defendants of just entering the criminal justice system, that's the decision to keep moving forward.
That's powerful. And, I think it's powerful that you're talking about your TED Talk now. Wesam, I want to put for our listeners the name of your talk. So what is the name of your TED Talk?
Yes, and that is, does justice always require a conviction?
Justice? Always.
Does justice always require a conviction?
So does justice always require? Y'all better go listen to this. I'm telling you, it will change your life. It was one of the most powerful talks I've ever seen.
Thank you, Dr. India. Thank you so much. It was humbling.
Yes. And so talk about the grit that it took for you to actually plow through your TEDx experience.
Well, it helped riding the waves of positivity that was shown in the room. Honestly, everyone was so supportive during that moment and, afterwards. But no, it definitely, let's not pretend, compiling it, working on it, polishing it, and, actually sharing this message nationwide was truly humbling. But we're not going to pretend that it was without its difficulties. However, something powerful that motivated me was sharing the story of Chris was not just him, that there's a billion other, millions of other Chris's out there, potentially in the future, there could be other individuals who are facing the criminal justice system, right? This overcoming system, and at this crossroads of what they're going to do. And it's not just for the individuals like Chris, but I hope that it could serve as guidance to some of my colleagues or other individuals who are aiming to one day join the system, whether it is being a prosecutor, public defender, judge, law enforcement, whatever it may be. Hopefully this perspective and this idea we're sharing that I spread that day could help guide some people.
Beautiful. And it makes me think you're talking about reaching people that have some pretty tough emotions and some people that might feel like they're hopeless. So with that said, how do you use grit to thrive through hopelessness? And what advice would you give to people to do the same?
You have to go back to your core, your center. You're in that moment of, if you want to use the word hopelessness, your last leg, where you're I'm a man of faith, and you're essentially pleading to God, to help you during this moment and guide you through this moment. For someone like me, I rely on my faith big time. I'm a practicing Muslim, and I lean hard on my faith during that moment. And not for individuals who may not be religious or, having a duality with it, by all means, lean on your faith, but also go back to your core. Why are you doing this in the first place?
Right.
Whatever your job was, wherever it was. And, by all means, we can talk about it in the lens of the criminal justice system, but what's your job? Dr. India, a teacher, right? Why did I go to college? Why did I want to get this degree? because, I obviously wanted to teach, or, maybe I want to become a doctor, a lawyer, engineer. We can go on and on. Why did your initial self want to go there? The reason exists, right? And it's totally okay to fall off with interests or things like that. But forget about work entirely. Maybe you're doing something nonprofit related, helping people. What's the root cause? You need to go back to that, because that's what motivated you, and that's what's going to get you through this. And hopefully, if you do have faith in your life, lean on that as well. With these two combined, you'll be unstoppable, even during those times.
Wow. And that's so powerful that you're saying this, and I'm so grateful that you're saying that, because sometimes we forget to go back to our core because of all the ways of life, and we're just like being tossed to and fro, trying to figure out what our purpose is. And like you said, some people aren't even getting quiet enough. Like when I went into education, I got quiet. I was at University of Florida, and I was actually playing the piano, and I was kind of just talking to God, and I was actually letting God know that I was tired of majoring in math because it was too hard. And
that's it. That's why I became a lawyer, by the way, because the math is not my strong suit either. There's no counting in the courtroom. Okay.
That's a pretty good point you made. That's a pretty good point you made. But like, I remembered I was sitting there and I'm like thinking and I'm praying and I'm like, I want to drop out. Is this a good time? And it's like, he's like, no, you're going to major in math. You need to teach. I want you to teach. And I heard that. And no, I'm not crazy. I did hear the Almighty talk to me, and I was like, okay, I guess I need to go teach. And now it's beautiful because it's like that one seed of I want you to start in the classroom. Now I get to teach teachers as an author, right? And tell them what I would have done in their shoes. So it's a part of fulfilling that purpose. And I know that you as a lawyer, you went from saying, okay, I want to help justice with this one particular situation, and now you're impacting thousands, millions, you know what I mean? And it's a powerful and a beautiful thing, and you were able to do that through grit. And so I want to now ask you another question.
Yeah.
When it comes to utilizing grit for success, you're a very successful young man. Okay. You're a prosecutor. You're working at one of the top, prosecuting offices in the nation. You're a TEDx speaker. You're just making impact. You're speaking as a speaker for various organizations, nonprofits, for-profits. People are wanting your message. So when it comes to utilizing grit for your success, what advice would you give to a listener?
When you are at a struggling moment, right? And we don't have to go to the extreme of the last question of like hopelessness, right?
Right.
When you're overcoming challenges, you're facing them head on. Okay, you're questioning, okay, what's the right time? I would truly recommend to anyone to remember you are not alone. You are not alone, right?
Wow.
You have your family, you might have your friends, but more crucially at this moment, by all means, rely on them. This is your village, so to say, right? Mentors, right? People ahead of you who've gone through this path that you've gone. And perhaps you're going through a new innovative path that none of your family, friends, mentors, anyone have ever come across. But still, relying on those around you, right? This is its own type of grit.
Yes.
You cannot, no human, doesn't matter how successful, how big, bad you are, no one can overcome this world alone. It's impossible. It's impossible. But you know how you can, is with those around you, your loved ones, your family, your friends. But more importantly, is like when you're on this path and you know where you're going and you have people ahead of you who've already gone through it, lean on them, ask them these questions, right? Ask them for these pivoting moments. And even people who haven't gone on this path, if it's an innovative or not, still lean on them, because they're going to think of something that you didn't even know even existed, some sort of idea you couldn't even conceptualize because they come from a different background.
That's beautiful. It's the power of just connecting. Yeah, it's the power of getting people different from you, an opportunity to be in your life, to really make things happen. So now I want to ask you a question, taking that same thought. Talk about a time, a professional time when you had to use grit.
There definitely can be multiple stories, but in my opinion, with my colleagues specifically as well, along with myself, is the everyday, we have these large caseloads. So specifically right now, I'm assigned to the #1 volume misdemeanor domestic violence courtroom in all of Cook County, and the whole County State's Attorney's Office. And this isn't just about myself. My colleagues also have these, large volume amount of cases where you have to remind yourself that despite these numbers, every single one of those cases, there's a real person behind that case.
Yes.
Right? A defendant, someone who's been arrested, a victim, and a family attached to it. Let's say in domestic violence, but even outside domestic violence, pretend someone did a theft, a battery, whatever. There's a story of how those individuals got there. And when you're having these large volumes, it's easy to kind of become like this machine where it becomes robotic. Okay, let me just get through this next case. Let me just get through the next case. Right. And you start rotating, the rotors start moving, and the machine starts going. You got to pull a plug on that mentality.
Yeah.
And this is where the grit comes in. When you have to resist and fight back against that machine mentality, right? And it's difficult, even for myself, I'm going to say, where you have this large volume, it's so easy to give in and just think, okay, I'm just going to go through this as fast as I possibly can. And you kind of lose sight in a hot second of that humanity aspect where there's these real people behind this file that you might have, right? Where whatever happens to both parties could just change their outcome of their lives and trajectory forever, right? And for you, or for a prosecutor or just someone in my field, they can just think it's just another file. I have X amount of more cases to go, right? So you use that grit to fight and resist against that energy that's there. It's every single day.
Wow, that's so powerful. That is, and I'm thankful that you care enough about the individual behind those cases to do that. So I thank you on behalf of so many people that are undergoing some tough situations like the ones that you've mentioned. And so, and this makes me think now too of, your journey as a leader and even as an educator, because as a speaker, you are educating people in your field. You educated me a lot in the TEDx audience, a lot when you were speaking about the work of a prosecutor in the criminal justice system.
And I did a good job. If I'm educating you, the educator, that means that I did a good job. Now I'm satisfied. If I educated the teacher, I'm good to go now, Dr. India.
You did. So, but it's like when I think of that, it makes me think, tell me now about your journey as an educational leader, as a speaker, and how grit has helped you. So you've been a prosecutor, but I know you just didn't become a prosecutor overnight. Talk to us about this entire journey, how grit helped you, and now as an educator, as a TEDx speaker, how you're able to use that grit to help others.
Just to give a little bit of background. So I grew up here in the United States in the Chicagoland area as a Palestinian Muslim. And post 9/11, the conversation within my family of how we approach this world now completely shifted 100%. It wasn't just my family, my friends, and my community as well. And when I was growing up, discrimination, racism, bigotry, we were put in this corner. And I was constantly having to navigate, what does it mean to be me? This Palestinian, this Muslim identity piece here. And it wasn't just me. We were working alongside us together as a community and family and friends. And I came to college and I always thought, okay, 9/11, it's just me. And late high school, college kicked in, and I started noticing that it wasn't just my community, the Black community, the LGBT plus community. There were so many different communities out there that have been marginalized. And I thought to myself that I had to do something about this inequity that exists, right? And you could ask anyone. Ever since I was a little boy, I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer, right? But what's height? Where could I make the biggest difference?
Yeah.
And a lot of people tell me with my mentality, well, why aren't you a criminal defense attorney? Why aren't you defense minded? Things like that. And there's a lot of great work to be done on both sides. Don't get me wrong. Regarding the grit, I saw this amazing moment in law school, my first year of law school, and I was interning for this judge who was in charge of one of the specialty courts, mental health court, drug court, that I spoke about in my TED Talk. And to give context for those listening, is essentially it's a graduation program where these individuals, instead of getting prosecuted and convicted for said drug crime, they actually go through this extensive treatment process. And at the end of the treatment, their case gets dismissed and they're back on their feet. And just quickly, this moment where I saw this woman, it had been Memorial Day weekend. She had just come back. And she was on her graduation day and she was just bawling and crying. She was so happy. Thanking the judge, she said, I've been a drug addict for 16 years of my life and this program got me clean. And for the first time, my family had ostracized me. They said, you're done, get out, you're out of our lives, you're a drug addict. She said she got to enjoy that barbecue, that Memorial Day barbecue with her family. They invited her in because she got clean. And it was because of that program. And who I saw at the head of that table leading that project was the prosecutor, right? And the judge was sitting among them and everyone else involved. And I said, that's where I can make the biggest difference. That seat right there, because that person was leading that charge. Instead of choosing, okay, we're going to go bring down the hammer of justice. Okay, let's get you the maximum or something like that. There was this aspect, right? Which I'm really proud to say that my office, at the County State's Attorney's Office, takes really well. So tying this in to this education moment is I want to be able to share this, right? I've experienced this personally, these inequities, but I know these alternatives exist that can really change the lives of people and help disenfranchised and discriminated people day in, day out and lift us up, right? I'm not claiming that I have the solution to perfect the system. By all means, I'm just one man. But when we ask the second component, how does grit help me in this moment? When I see stories and moments like that woman, right? Here I am talking about this years later, easily later, right? And it's still embedded in my head. And stories like Chris, where I see these people, despite the overcoming odds, seeing them, who am I to ever think to myself, whatever, I'm going to give up. When these individuals who've gone through maybe even more than I have, they inspire me, Dr. India. They are the ones who inspire me to keep moving forward.
That is so powerful. Wow. And, I want to also thank you. And I'm just going to say this. I respect you highly because you didn't play the victim when you went through injustices yourself, but you actually used that. You recycled all the evil and you used it for good to help people. And so because of that, I wish you nothing but blessings and prosperity in all the work that you do with Wesam. So, with that said, guys, his TED Talk again, it's called Does Justice Always Require a Conviction? And so if you had a message to give to people regarding this TEDx talk that you had, what do you think the main message of this talk would be?
People have this idea of prosecution in the criminal system that there's only two cards. You either convict or not guilty and just let them go, possibly, right? And people have this mentality. We either be hard on crime, super hard and super tough, or you're letting all the criminals roam free on the streets. People don't have this middle ground. And what we come to learn about this system is everyone talks about this. It's not perfect, right? It's easy to say that. But when you're on the ground, these people's lives day in, day out, and how they're changing. Stories like Chris, an individual who is at this moment, do we pull this guillotine, right? And go super hard on this, 18-year-old. And now his life is skyrocketed to a different direction or not? Or do we, this mentality, you let him free and now he's going to go steal potentially another car. The message is we're human. All of us are.
Wow.
We all make mistakes. And we're talking about right now, I can hear someone say, well, I don't make mistakes of making crimes. Maybe I misspell something and that's a type of mistake. And I'm not saying that we should let murderers and our rapists run free on the street. No one is saying that. When we evaluate the system and we're criticizing it and we're looking at people's lives day in, day out, we have to remind ourselves that they are human too.
Right.
Not even a they. right? People have, oh, they, the criminals. No, it's not a they. It's a we. We're all human, right?
So powerful. Yes. We're
And
all human. And I'm so thankful you're saying that, because I mean, even when you look at, like, celebrities, we put them in this high ceiling of like, oh my God, they're just amazing and they're famous and they're so unique, but they're human. They have
yes,
moments where they're like, man, I need a coffee right now. I need to go to the restroom right now, or I'm
right,
not feeling so hot right now, because they're human.
right. And I know it's a bit off topic, but like, why do you hear of like, the most people who end up taking their lives, right? Is because we don't know what's happening on the inside.
Right.
And, when we talk about the criminal justice system, the inside, the story of Chris, where he has this mother, and we don't have to get too much into it, where she's raising him essentially by herself, right? And him doing the certain actions he may or may have not done, right? Similar with these celebrities that you're talking about, and everyone. Forget about celebrities. Forget about any individual. This is our humanity aspect. Is you don't know, and I'm saying this to everyone in general, not you, Dr. Neil, that we don't know what's going on in the lives of everyone day in, day out, the struggles that they're facing, right? Decisions they're making, right?
Right.
To a certain extent, we have to have mercy, right? We have to have mercy and understanding, but by all means, staying committed to holding those who deserve and should be held accountable. We hold them accountable, right, for their actions, but understanding that we're human at the same time.
This is so powerful. It breaks my heart as an educator when I hear little 13-year-old, 14-year-old males getting arrested and doing long charges, and it just crushes my spirit.
Right.
Because I think of the mercy element, and I know prosecutors do the best that they can, but it's like, I mean, I'm thankful for the work that you're doing, because it can seem a little bit overwhelming. I mean, when you look at the stats right now, we see that over 2 million students are dropping out of school every year. This is ridiculous, and that's ages 16 to 24. And it's just one of those things, like, what can we do? And I think just having more restorative practices like the one that, you mentioned in your TEDx talk is key for this. And so, with that said, I'm going to now talk about also just spirituality, and how have you used TED Talk, maybe, or grit? Talk about a spiritual time when you had to use grit.
That's a powerful one, because I really rely on my religion 24/7.
And I respect that.
One specific moment that might stand out. I'm just. Do you think does it have to be professional, or could it be personal at the same time?
It could be personal. It's a spiritual time, whether personal or professional. Whatever.
When I was in high school, I leading up, or I would say probably when I was a child, my parents raised me as a practicing Muslim for sure. But, just like any boy, I was in middle school and high school. I wanted to play video games, hang out with friends, be a boy,
Like my son.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that at the same time, right? Let the boys play. But at the same time, I remember I had joined speech team, and, hence wanting to be a lawyer. And this was really one of the biggest moments of where spirituality started kicking in, and my faith. I was working so hard, Dr. India, as a junior in high school to, become this great speaker. And it just wasn't working. No matter how many speech tournaments I went to my junior year, I wasn't getting ranked. I wasn't getting placed, and I was trying my hardest and getting taught from the best and all this stuff. It just wasn't clicking, no matter how hard I tried. And I just remember at the end of the junior year, it was like this big tournament, huge conference, and I had never prayed by myself, like just out of the goodness of my heart, to be like, okay, mom and dad aren't saying, oh, it's time for prayer. Just me walking in by myself, the first time I said, God, I'm hoping to do well in this. And, I know we haven't really spoken too much, essentially in my, after I had just prayed to him, I said, listen, I don't need to get first place, but maybe second place or third place or something like that.
Wow.
And that tournament I placed. And the moral of the story is it caused this domino effect, right? When we talk about when did you use the spiritual time to do grit, right? I've been trying this whole time without that spirituality. I wasn't going anywhere with it, right? And the second I asked for that help from, and outside of the professional world now, I'm talking about my personal self.
Yes.
And God, I knew he was in my corner. And from that point on, I became very consistent in practicing. And I realized just with him backing me, forget about my professional, forget about careers or anything. I knew just anything I could want to achieve or want to do to help this world. I knew with his backing, I could do it.
That's so powerful. And it's so true. And it, in my life, when my brother passed away, I had I didn't know what to do. I was actually homeless at the time, and I remembered going to visit my mom when she was alive and visiting my family. And I remembered at that time, it just didn't go well. The visit didn't go well. There was some dysfunction. And of course. And so long story short, we were all trying to deal with grief in our own ways. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm homeless, which who wants the stigma of homelessness when you've been in the home the entire time and you had a 4.1 GPA? Come on, right? But long story short, so I'm sitting there like dealing with the stigma, dealing with, I've got final exams in 2 weeks. How am I going to get through all of this? And nobody wants me. I had that message of rejection. And I remembered I pointed to the sky, Wesam. I pointed to the sky. And I said, God, you're my God. I don't know how I'm going to get through this, but I know you'll see me through this. And I told him, I said, if you can get me through this, I know you'll get me through any chapter of my life. And I was talking about my brother's death because my brother and I were peanut butter and jelly. My brother Timmy and I, we were inseparable. It was so bad at his funeral. All of his friends, because he was 25, I was 16, all of his friends would come up to me and just hug my neck with tears in their eyes and say, your brother was crazy about you. Your brother was crazy about you. Your brother was crazy about you. Even his girlfriend, your brother was crazy about you. And it was just, I knew I lost a huge part of me and it was in the grave. And I just didn't know how I was going to be able to bounce back. I couldn't even think about it. I had to literally block it out so I could continue to succeed, because if not, I just would have been distraught, and my spiritual time to say, God, I know I don't have all the answers, but I know you'll see me through this. You'll see me through this. And it was almost like that moment I went into covenant with God. Like, I don't care what else I go through. If you get me through this, I know you'll get me through any other chapter of my life. And so I think that when you were talking about just giving God a chance and say, God, listen, I don't need to be all that in a bag of chips. Just put me there. Just somehow rank me, and I'll give you glory. Just let me just be in the top. It's beautiful that you shared that with us about grit and about how God came through once again. So,
and Dr. India, I do want to point out, that story is truly humbling, and I'm so sorry for your loss. You're as you said, peanut butter and jelly, like this closeness, that inseparability. I'm sorry to hear about that, but it's inspiring to hear, right? This faith component. Doesn't matter what avenue of challenge we're facing, it's there for us,
Yeah.
It's inspiring to hear from someone else, right? That it's not just you, and maybe sometimes you think it's just you. So thank you for sharing that message.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you for sharing the experience of yours.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm here. And I think that's why I even do this podcast, to get people like you on it and to lift you guys up, because you're doing such phenomenal work. And, I just remembered the team that got me through, from that moment. And they didn't look like me, it was people from my community, people outside of my community, my teachers. My teachers had the greatest impact. Like Miss Wilson, I'll never forget, it was her class where I found out, it was my math class. I found out my brother died. I had a test on that day. She gave me mercy. And now I was able to major in math because I wanted to be like her. And so, it just goes to show that, when we couple grit with mercy, power happens, things happen to help people. And so thanks for allowing me to share that. And, it is very one of those things that I have to, harbor my emotions, because I could like break down and cry, of course. But I also know that, my brother, is with the Lord. And I know that, he fulfilled his purpose. And one of the things he always did for me, he cultivated grit. He'd always say, India, get straight A's. India, do the best. India, make your haters mad. Just keep being awesome. And he would always just motivate me. He had the brightest smile. He was 6'4". I mean, he'd light up a room. Timmy was really an amazing person. And so I feel that, even doing podcasts like this is just a part of his memorial, and it's a part of honoring who he was when he walked this earth. And so with that said, grit is what it's all about, Wesam. And to those that are listening, if we have grit, we can get through grief. And I talked about that in my TEDx. When you have grit, you'll get through grief. You'll get through whatever life throws at you. And so with that said, Wesam, I want to turn it back to you. What is one last nugget you want to share with our audience about cultivating grit and using grit to make it happen for their lives?
There's going to become moments in our lives, right? And I'm not going to go back to that helplessness mentality. You're going to be unstoppable. You're going to feel like you're on cloud 10. It's going to be incredible moments, right?
Right.
And we talked about the helplessness moment. Oh, how do we overcome helplessness? But I want you to also forget about those highs, those incredible highs. When you've done something amazing in your life, whatever it may be, in your world, there's going to be individuals, Dr. India, like your brother told you, make those haters mad, when you're, projecting and branding yourself and doing things so well, is for those individuals listening, when you have your big high moment, at least in my opinion, it takes a certain amount of grit to stay up there and to remain in that high moment.
Right.
That when you're celebrating, it's easy for others to want to bring you down in that moment, right? And it's easy for others to make it seem like it's not that big of a deal, or a soft congratulations, right? I would say to you, show grit during those high moments and keep yourself high. Beautiful. Because you deserve that. You deserve that. And by all means, don't go too high where your head's too big, right? But what I'm saying here is show grit by treating yourself, celebrating yourself, and honoring yourself, because you deserve that just as any other person would in your shoes. And it doesn't matter if you're insecure, it doesn't matter if you don't think you're worth it or worth to celebrate that moment, because you are. Show grit by celebrating yourself. Show grit by honoring yourself, truly, because you do deserve it. And I do want to end off by saying to Dr. India, she's been praising me like crazy in anything. And I want to say thank you for having me. Her TEDx talk was amazing as well. And her story. And for those of you who don't know, she's got the cutest son in the world. I'll tell you that right now. For those of you who don't know, and I tell you this all the time, Dr. India, with a mother like you, he's going to be bigger and better than both of us combined, Thank
you.
And I just want to say thank you to all those listening, and I hope we were able to share some positive messages and powerful, inspiring messages today.
Thank you so much, Wesam. That was very nice and kind of you. I appreciate your kind words. And so, of course, listen, I already know you guys are going to want to stay connected to Wesam. Who doesn't, right? So, Wesam, tell us, help us out. How can we reach you on social media or via email so we can get you on those platforms, on those stages, so people can ask you questions about the work that you do? They want you to come in to speak, or they want to consult with you. How can we reach you?
Yeah, and thank you, Dr. India, for asking. Now, if you're asking on the professional lens or personal lens, feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn. Just type in my first and last name, and happy to connect on LinkedIn for any type of speaking engagements, conferences, anything of the sorts, and just want to make a new friend. Happy to do so. And I'm also excited to learn from you all at the same time. In a personal sense, feel free to reach out via Facebook. I'm not closed-minded about that. But yeah, more than welcome to on Facebook and LinkedIn. And on the more prosecutorial end, feel free to reach out to my office at the Cook County State's Attorney's Office and ask for me. They're well aware of who I am and would easily be able to pull me out of there as well. And you could just reach us at our, literally just Google it, and you'll be able to track us down.
Now, how do you spell that though? Wesam, that office name?
Yeah, Cook County, so COOK, and then County, COUNTY. State's Attorney's Office. So that's STATE', and Attorney's Office, ATTORNEY, and an office.
Now, Cook County?
Like I'm a chef, like a chef, a cook.
Okay.
A cook. Yeah.
It's Chicago, guys. He's in Chicago.
Yes.
Hot off the press.
Yeah, Cook County Attorney's Office. Yeah.
Get it hot off the press.
Yeah. And I do want to thank my office for all the support they've shown up to this point. They really are amazing that they've helped lifted me in this way. And of course, a big thanks to our host today, Dr. India White, and the Let's Get Gritty podcast for having me tonight.
Well, thank you again, Wesam, and it's an honor. Again, guys, this has been a blessing to have Wesam on the Let's Get Gritty podcast. And if you guys are interested in joining the podcast, please email me a photo and bio to india.white.123@gmail.com. So with that said, Wesam, thank you. Thank you for the work you do.
Thank you, Dr. India. Thank you, Dr. India, for the work you do. And thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, guys, we'll see you next time. Until then, stay gritty. Take care, guys.
Take care.